In these notes, we're going to look at some simple two-column proofs which are used to prove a statement in geometry. And in these notes, we're going to be proving triangle congruency using what we learned in the previous notes and organizing our information in a two-column way. These are called two-column proofs. So just before we start, just quickly remember, in the previous notes we have done, all the way from Unit 1 to now, these are the postulates that we have learned. So we had segment and angle addition postulates, complementary, supplementary angles, alternate exterior and interior angles corresponding same side, and then more relevant, we have vertical angles, and then all the triangle congruency postulates we learned in the previous notes. We may also need to keep in mind the reflexive property, which states that a number or geometric element is always congruent to itself. That's called the reflexive property. And so the way a two-column proof works is we have statements of fact. They go in the left-hand column, and their proofs or the reasons that that is true go in the right-hand column. And so much of what we will do is use what we are given, and then we'll write that down, and then we'll see what else we need or what we know to prove the indicated statement. So, for example, the first one here says given angle A is congruent to angle J, angle B is congruent to angle K, and segment BC is congruent to segment KL, prove triangle ABC is congruent to triangle JKL. And so some of these statements we are given in the problem, and so we can assume that they are true. So where it says angle A is congruent to angle J, the reason for that is that it is given to us in the problem. Same thing with angle B. We can label that A and J. And you don't always have a picture, but it helps. So you will in these notes. Angle B is congruent to angle K. This is also given to us in the problem. Angle B and angle K. So you can label your picture. And segment BC is congruent to segment KL. Again, that is given to us in the problem. So we have BC and KL. And now our statement, triangle ABC is congruent to triangle JKL. We know this is true because of the information we are given, which is an angle, and a side. We can say that this is true because of the angle, side postulate. Okay, now this might have seemed a little straightforward, a little obvious that we did it in this way, but this is just a simple example, and half of this was filled in for us. We just had to write down the reasons. Most of the time, you won't have any of this, and you'll have to write the two columns yourself. Let's look at the next one. It says, given that segment DC is congruent to segment KL, and angle L is congruent to angle C, prove triangle BDC is congruent to BKL. So a little less is given to us this time, but not much less. So let's see, segment DC is congruent to segment KL. That was given to us. So we need that, DC and KL. We know that angle L is congruent to angle C. Should make that first angle symbol smaller. And that was also given to us. So L and C. Now, this is obviously not enough information, but we can know this and this. These angles are congruent. So we can say that angle CBD is congruent to angle LBK because of the vertical angle postulate. We know that those are vertical angles. Right, so we know that. And then again, we can use the angle side postulate. Now, sometimes there could be more than one way to prove two triangles are congruent based on the information you have and the picture you're given. This is the method that made the most sense to me here, but perhaps there was a different way we could have gone. And remember, we weren't given this information in the problem, but based on the picture, we know that that is true because we know that vertical angles are congruent. All right, here we have one that we have to do all of this ourselves. So it says given segment UZ is congruent to UV and angle VTU is 90 degrees, prove these two triangles are congruent. So let's first start with the given information. So we know that segment UZ is congruent to segment UV. Maybe I should put number 1. And we know that that is true because it was given to us in the problem. Notice I didn't put any lines on this table because we should really, knowing how many steps there are is kind of a hint. So we'll have to figure this out on our own. 2, we know that angle VTU is 90 degrees because that was given to us. So this angle here is 90 degrees. Oh, and UZ and UV are congruent. Now, the 90-degree angle is kind of a hint that we should maybe look at the hypotenuse leg postulate. We know that if this is 90, then we can know that UTZ, angle UTZ is 90 degrees because of supplementary angles. Right, we also know this angle is 90 degrees because VTZ is a straight line, and so they make 180, and 180 minus 90 is 90. Okay, so we have two right triangles, and we know their hypotenuses are the same. We also know that they share this side right here. So we know that segment UT, which I believe is also would be UT if we use the other triangle, naming it VUT and ZUT, even though our problem says QPR, but those letters do not match. So these should be VUT and ZUT, which we do have in our other given information. For some reason, the triangle's wrong. Anyway, back to the problem. So they would both be named segment UT. I was just checking to see if it should be TU and UT. Not that it matters too much. We know what we're talking about here. And this is true because of that reflexive property that we talked about up above, right? Everything is equal to itself. So we know segment UT is congruent to itself. And now we have enough to prove that triangle VUT is congruent to triangle ZUT. And we know that because of the hypotenuse leg postulate, because we have the hypotenuses of our right triangles are congruent, and the legs, or one leg, in each triangle is congruent because that segment is congruent to itself. So that is enough to prove congruency there. And I'm not sure why I wrote a 6 here. That should match. That is item number 5. Okay, so that's a 2-column proof. Write down your given information, think about what you're trying to prove, and look to see if there's any additional information you can glean from your picture that is necessary to prove those triangles are congruent. For example, here we used our vertical angles, and here we used our reflexive property and the fact that two 90-degree angles add up to 180. So depending on the picture, you may need to use your prior knowledge to actually prove those triangles are congruent.